Hello everyone and welcome! In this tutorial we are going to be making an eco bag. It is a classic tote bag that you would use for grocery shopping, for instance, and that you can fold in a snap. When it is folded, you can use it as a wallet and place it in your bag, ready to be unfolded when needed. So here is the beautiful fabric that I chose. It is a simple cotton canvas, and we are going to start by cutting 2 rectangles for the tote. Then we cut 2 long stripes for the handles, and finally I have cut the top and bottom parts of the front pocket. I highly recommend you to give the corners a rounded shape, but be careful to make every corner identical. We will also need about 80 centimeters of bias. The width of my bias when it's folded is 12 millimeters. I also have 1 meter of zipper. You can buy it by the meter with heads on the side. We will need 2 of them today. So let's start with the handles. I fold each side at 1 centimeter from the edge, wrong sides together, and then I fold the whole thing a second time lengthwise. We are going to stitch it at 1 or 2 millimeters from both edges. Same thing on the other handle, of course. Here I am using a presser foot for edge stitching, but of course you can use the regular presser foot. If you are interested in the edge stitching presser foot, the link is in the description box below. Don't forget to make a few securing stitches at the beginning and the end, and don't forget either to stitch both sides and both handles. Voila, it's done! Now we are going to start working on the front pocket. Here is the bottom, which I have doubled with fusible fabric, but that's not compulsory. We fold the piece in half, wrong sides together, and mark the fold with an iron. I repeat the same operation with the top part of the pocket. Voila, both pieces are ready. We are going to cut a piece of zipper, leaving about 1 centimeter allowance on both sides, which will make it easier to insert. On both sides of the teeth, I place a mark. Here on this side, here is the other side, and then we can open the zipper completely. Thanks to the marks, we can attach to the upper and bottom pieces both sides of the zipper and stitch them at 1 millimeter from the edge with a sewing machine. Once again, I use a presser foot for edge stitching, but of course it works perfectly fine with a regular foot if you take the time to sew straight and parallel to the folded edge of the fabric. Make sure that the zipper isn't moving around, and if necessary, replace it as you go. When both sides are stitched, we're going to insert the head of the zipper. I use the little tool called a Wonder Zip, and it is really useful. It will allow us to hold and block the head of the zipper so we can insert both sides inside. We place it face down in the groove and insert both sides of the zipper with the wrong side facing us and the right side facing down, just like the head. Now we need to pull cautiously but firmly. It requires a little bit of practice at first, but when you get used to it, it is a wonderful tool. You can do without, of course, or with a fork instead. Now we cut the excess zipper on both sides, and then we're going to add bias all around the pocket. You can start where you'd like, because we will join both ends beautifully. So I open one side of the bias and I align it with the edge of my pocket and I pin it. We are going to do the same all around, making sure that the corners are neat and perfectly round. Generally speaking, when you do pin fabric, I recommend using a lot of pins in curved sections, and then you can afford to place less pins when it is straight. When we have gone all around, we need to join both ends together. So I square the bias, which means that I fold it at a 90-degree angle, and I crease the fold with my finger. Then I do the same on the other side. Again, I square the end of the bias, but this time on the other direction, so as to have both ends touching. Now we need to attach these ends together. So using a pin, pin them together and stitch in the crease. You can stitch on one side or the other, it doesn't matter. So just do that with your sewing machine, and when it is done, cut the excess fabric at about 5 mm from the seam, as well as the pointy ends. Then we can open the seam, cut the excess fabric again, and finish to pin the bias to the pocket. Now it is time to stitch the bias with the sewing machine all around the pocket. And we are going to stitch in the fold. Take your time at the corners and make beautiful round shapes. You want the 4 corners to look exactly the same. So I remind you that we stitch in the open fold. When I reach the zipper, I do a few back and forth stitches to make the seam very sturdy there, but please go easy and slowly, you do not want to break your needle. Then, when you have gone all around, don't forget to add a few securing stitches and voila! Next step, we are going to completely open the bias and fold it on the back. Press it flat. I start with the straight sides and keep the angles for later. So now here is an angle. I press slowly and neatly, trying to keep the round shape as perfect as possible. You will see this is the beauty of using bias binding. It's very flexible and adaptive. You just have to firmly but nicely shape it the way you'd like. Now we're going to add a zipper all around the pocket, and to do so, I start with parting both sides of it. We will use one side, you can keep the other for your next project. On the left side of my pocket, I mark the middle with a textile pen or with tailor's chalk, and then I'll top stitch the bias on about 4 to 5 centimeters at 1 mm from the edge. So using this mark as a guide, we're going to start placing our zipper, leaving about 3 centimeters of allowance on the left side of the mark. The right side of the zipper is pressed against the wrong side of the pocket, and you can only see the teeth peeking out now. The idea is to baste the zipper all around by hand or like me with the machine. Here we have the middle mark. I'm going to start stitching 2 centimeters down. To machine baste, use the longest straight stitch available. This way it will be easy to unpick later on. Also, don't stitch on the bias, but stitch beside it. Let's do it. It's gonna go fast because we are using long stitches, but you have to be very precise and take your sweet time at the corners. I remind you that it is a basting stitch, which is temporarily attaching the zipper around the pocket. You do not need to stitch at a steady distance from the edge. The stitches will be removed later. Once you'll have gone all around, think about moving the beginning end of the zipper out of the way so it won't be taken in the seam. And stop stitching about 2 centimeters before the middle mark. So here is what this will look like. I have basted my zipper all around and I have left both ends free, so I can now fold them on the back right in the middle. Have a closer look at the screen. When both ends are perfectly folded on the back, we're going to cut the excess at the exact same length. Then we take out the pins and insert the head of the zipper the same way we did for the pocket's zipper at the beginning of this tutorial. It is time to place our pocket on the right side of one of the bag's pieces. Check that it is well centered horizontally. I have about 11 centimeters on both sides, and for the bottom about 7 centimeters. On the top of the bag we will have a large hem. Now fix the pocket with pins, it will make your life easier at the sewing machine. We will stitch the bias at 1 mm from the edge all around, starting from one side of the zipper and finishing on the other side. In any case, you won't be able to stitch here, and anyway, I suggest to let a little bit of ease for the zipper around here. At the end, just like at the beginning, don't forget securing stitches, and this time it's not like the basting stitches that you can see and that we will unpick. This time, be very thorough and neat and steady with beautiful corners. Alright, a few securing stitches just before the zipper head, and we can now take out the pins, remove the basting stitches, and press our work with passion. Okay, let's work on the bag now. I turn my first side and I place the second on top of it, wrong sides together, because we are going to make a French seam, you'll see. We need to stitch both layers together at about 8 mm from the edge with a securing stitch at the beginning and the end. And when it's done, I cut the excess fabric at about 3 mm from my seam. I also cut the excess fabric at both corners, as you can see, and then we can turn the bag outside out. Really open the seam and press neatly. You can then stitch again at 5 mm from the edge this time, and with securing stitches at the beginning and the end. Now, last but not least, we need to hem the bag and add the handles as well. It's very quick and easy. So first, we need to fold the top a first time at 1 cm from the edge, and then a second time at 3 cm from the edge. I highly recommend you acquire a sewing gauge as it doesn't cost much and it is very, very useful. The link is in the description down below. I place a pin here to hold the hem in place, and we're going to make the same thing all around the bag. Then I press with passion, you know me, pressing really makes a big difference, and then we can insert the handles. From the side seam, I measure 6.5 cm and I place one end of the handle. I pin it and I do the exact same thing on the other side. Same thing also on the other side of the bag, this time with the handle number 2. Finally, we're going to make a row of straight stitches all around at about 1 or 2 mm from the folded edge, and a second row at 1 or 2 mm from the edge. Here you can see me finish the first row. We can also see our beautiful French seam on the side with the row edges neatly sandwiched inside. We have gone all around the bag. We can do a few securing stitches, and then I start on the edge without forgetting to stitch the handles at the same time. Make sure they stay straight and reposition them if needed. Voila, dear friends, this is the end of this tutorial. We just have to turn the bag inside out to press and press and press again, and it's ready to go. I am looking forward to reading your comments, and I wish you a very happy sewing time. Bye bye! À bientôt!